Putin is in full-blown panic, and his paranoia just claimed its biggest victim yet. The crisis began with a simple failed phone call, and now Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov, who has been at Putin's side for 21 years, has become the latest casualty of Kremlin's dissent. Lavrov is now the official scapegoat for the collapse of the Russian economy and the collapse of the planned Trump-Putin summit. This purge is a warning to the entire elite class. Putin does not care about loyalty. He only cares about survival. While the Russian media pretends that Lavrov never existed, Putin has resurrected the good Tsar, bad boyars tactic. The lie is simple. Russia is failing not because of Putin, but because of corrupt politicians who sabotage his orders. Now, the question for every Russian official is clear. Who's next on the chopping block? Well, to find out what happens next, let's look at how we got here. It all started with a list of demands that Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov sent to the Secretary of State Marco Rubio. According to the Financial Times, these demands came just a day after President Trump and Putin agreed over the phone to meet in Budapest. The goal of this meeting was supposed to be to discuss how to end the Russian invasion in Ukraine. On the phone, Putin let on that he was willing to discuss how to bring peace as long as the United States does not give tomahawks to Ukraine. But days later, the Russian foreign minister sent a memo underlying the same demands that Putin has been asking for 3.5 years. These included territorial concessions, deep reduction of Ukraine's armed forces, and guarantees that Ukraine will never join NATO. For the United States, this was not a discussion. This was a waste of time. Because what Russia is asking for is not peace. It's asking for a Ukrainian surrender. Well, this is when the United States announced unprecedented sanctions. They completely blocked oil sales from two of the biggest Russian oil companies, and now Russian exports are down in the gutters. That's not me saying it, that's the US intelligence. Take a listen.
I wanted to hear if you have an update on the Russian oil sanctions. We're seeing reports that the exports are way down. So how do you think that could affect the war in Ukraine, the United States' interests, and your partners here tonight, too?
Well, I can say that the exports from Russia are way down. We just like to see an end to the war. We'd love to see an end to that war. So many people are being killed. A lot of Russian soldiers are being killed. So we think at some point they're going to get very smart and they're going to do that. So, yeah, the Russian exports are substantially down.
We can see that the Russian economy is already struggling. And the funniest part is that, officially speaking, sanctions don't go into effect until November 22nd. That's because US announced the sanctions on October 22nd and gave every company in the world 1 month to cut all business ties with the companies that were sanctioned. Well, just a few weeks into the sanctions announcement, the business ties have been cut already. And Putin knew this was coming. That's why, just days after the United States announced the sanctions, the Kremlin TV started sending a cryptic message. This is something I covered 12 days ago, and take a listen to what the Kremlin TV was saying.
In reality, our state is weak. It's weak. It was created to be weak. It was created in the 1990s in such a way that some oligarch or some person could influence how the state would continue to operate. Naturally, this weak state now needs to be strengthened somehow. There is no need to wait until the war is over.
Not a weak state, but a weak construction. That is, its architecture itself.
We have strong presidential power.
That's where I was leading to.
The state on which this power stands, this structure, this basis, it is weak. When a huge number of the president's orders go ignored because officials find it easier to do nothing, knowing the results of inaction, like with oil refineries and so on, correct? The state can't do anything because it doesn't have a mechanism to force this official to do something.
It's even scarier than that. In the 1990s, we built it in such a way that gaps of irresponsibility were formed, when there is simply no one responsible there. We still think that ministries manage the sectors they're named for, but that's not even close to reality.
Now, this is the good old Russian tactic of good Tsar, bad boyar, meaning anything good that happens inside the country, it's always because of the Tsar. At the moment, that's Putin. But if there's something bad that's happening in Russia, that's definitely not Putin's fault, but rather it's the fault of all the boyars, aka advisors and politicians that are around Putin. That's because these people just don't listen to the strong leadership of Putin. They sabotage his plans and they are corrupt. This is the good old way for the czars like Putin to survive while throwing their politicians and advisors under the bus. Well, this is what I predicted exactly 12 days ago. Just take a listen. Russian politicians better watch out, because Kremlin TV gets their talking points straight from the Kremlin. Right now, Putin is just blaming the politicians. Soon he'll start punishing everyone for his failures. You see, the situation in Russia is getting so bad that even state propaganda could not avoid it. So they have to talk about it since it's everywhere. That means they're gonna have to give someone to the public to hang. It's not gonna be Putin. Now, I don't want to give any ideas to Russian politicians, but all I'm saying is if they were watching my channel, Lavrov would know what was coming. This is the report that we got yesterday. The Kremlin is looking for someone to blame after the collapse of Putin-Trump talks. And according to Russian insiders, that responsibility has been pinned on the foreign minister Lavrov. He's now the main scapegoat. Ironically, Lavrov was actually trying to impress Putin by taking a hard line with the United States during the negotiations, but he overplayed his hand. He came unprepared, refused to discuss a compromise, and rigidly repeated Putin's instructions on Ukraine. Well, now even the Russian media is wondering why he's not showing up in all the official meetings. Just recently, he was absent from the big Security Council meeting where Putin was throwing around nuclear threats. The reason this is such a huge deal is because he's the only permanent member so far who was not at that meeting. Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, it also seems that he's been removed as the head of the delegation that's going to the G20 summit. Now, you see, ever since this invasion started, Putin has not been leaving the country much. That means it has been Lavrov who has been heading the Russian delegation for the last 3 years at G20. Which makes sense, he is the foreign minister after all. But it seems at the last second his name was pulled. Now, if you guys are wondering about my personal opinion on this, I honestly think it's a good decision that Russia is not sending Lavrov, because this is what happened last time Lavrov went to G20.
You know, the war which we are trying to stop and which was launched against us using Ukrainian people.
Lavrov getting benched is a huge shock for everyone inside Russia and outside. That's because his position on the war is not much different than what Putin has been saying for all these years. But even then, when things are going bad, Lavrov is the one getting thrown under the bus for saying the exact same thing as Putin. Now, this is despite the fact that Lavrov has been beside Putin for 21 years. That's a very long time. Just listen to NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte explain exactly how long that is.
Lavrov, I mean, he is foreign minister of Russia, I think, since the birth of Jesus Christ. And since then, anything useful came out of his mouth. So let's not pay too much attention to Mr. Lavrov.
For Lavrov, this may come as a surprise, but for many Russians who have been ardent supporters of this war, this is nothing new. That's because there's been a trend going on in Russia for the past few months, maybe the whole 2025, where Putin is arresting not just the dissenters, but also many popular pro-war figures inside the country. That's because rival factions within Russia are now turning on each other, and those two factions are the veteran propagandists who are tightly bound to the defense industry and the Kremlin. These people are known as the loyalists, and the other faction, which is kind of a new faction, is all these ultra-nationalist war supporters who are calling themselves Z-vlogger. Now, we often cite these Z-vloggers in our videos because they follow the war very closely and they provide the Russian point of view. But on top of that, some of these Z-bloggers have been publicly criticizing Putin for the way he's carrying out this war. This is where I want to clarify a little. They're not criticizing Putin for launching this war. Complete opposite, actually. They're saying that Putin is not going hard enough in Ukraine. They want to eradicate Ukrainian nationality from this world, and they see the Russian military as a failure for not achieving that goal. Well, for Putin, it doesn't matter whether the threat is coming from the dissenters or the ultra-nationalists, because at the end of the day, for him, it's not really about anything. It's only about survival. This is where it's good to remind everyone that Prigozhin wasn't someone who was against this war that Putin started. He was against the way the defense ministry was carrying out the war, and that's why he marched on Moscow. Now, we all know what happened to Prigozhin. The plane just stopped working midair. Well, Putin cannot afford another Prigozhin 2.0, and that's exactly why we're seeing more and more arrests of these ultra-nationalist Z-bloggers. And the funniest part of all this is a lot of people who are getting arrested were very happily and very publicly celebrating when Putin was arresting pro-democracy protesters and when Putin was arresting people who are fighting for fair elections. And now they are baffled when the same thing is happening to them. Now, for rest of the Russians, the depression is not going to slow down anytime soon. Even the Russian media is reporting on a daily basis how fast the Russian economy is deteriorating. That means Putin needs to lock down all the people who can be risk to his position. Just take a look at what the Russian media was saying yesterday.
Nezavisima Gazeta reports the number of loss-making enterprises is increasing at a faster rate. In Russia, the number of unprofitable companies is growing rapidly off the back of abnormally tough monetary policy and the policy of cooling the Russian economy. The list of loss-making enterprises includes key transport infrastructure, utilities, and energy companies. According to the Russian Statistics Agency, the share of loss-making companies in our country has increased to 30%. In the first 8 months of this year, of the 44,000 enterprises that submitted financial reports, nearly 1 in 3 were loss-making. And there are problems on the railways. Russian railways are forecasting a 6% drop in freight volume in 2025. And problems with pensions. Pensioners face a collapse in living standards. According to predictions, in 2026, the national average pension will be about 25% of the average salary. Retirement means a 4-fold drop in living standards, so some elderly citizens continue to work, including in retirement. What to do about rising prices in the shops? Izvestia reports on a bill in Parliament that proposes limiting to 15% the markup retail chains can put on goods. At the moment, the markup can be as high as 300%. This is the reason for rising prices, say those behind the initiative. Experts fear that this measure will significantly lower the revenue of retail chains and could lead to shortages.
I don't know if you guys remember, but the shortages are why the Soviet Union collapsed. Well, it seems to me that Putin is truly rebuilding the Soviet Union, and maybe he'll even make Russia small again. If you guys are interested in a t-shirt like this, there's a link in the description now, so go check it out. My name is Sam, and I'll see you guys in the next video.